Hello and welcome to Nerd Files. Today we are going to be talking about the Battle of Carrhae in the first episode of Military History Explained. The Battle of Carrhae in 53 BCE was a military disaster for the Roman Empire and seen as one of the most important battles between Parthia and Rome. In Parthia, a war of succession had broken out between the brothers Orestes II and Mithridates IV. Mithridates was defeated and fled to Aulus Gabinius, the Roman proconsul of Syria. Galbinius hoped to join in the fray in hopes of gaining control of Parthia through a figurehead. His successor, Marcus Crassus, also sought the same thing. He allied himself with Osroene, a client state of Parthia, but he wasted time waiting for reinforcements, and Mithridates was besieged and executed by Surena, a Parthian commander. Nevertheless, Crassus still decided to invade Parthia, expecting it would be easy to conquer. He left in 55 BCE for Syria and was joined by Publius Crassus, his son. In Syria, his immense wealth purchased a large army. His force consisted of 7 legions of heavy infantry, totaling from 28,000 to 35,000, as well as 4,000 light infantry and 4,000 cavalry. Other Hellenic settlements supplied an additional 6,000 men. Most of the Parthian army was invading Armenia, and a force of 10,000 cavalry, 9,000 of which were mounted archers, and 1,000 of which were heavily armored cataphracts, were placed under the command of Surena. Being outnumbered 5-1 by the Romans, they were expected only to delay them, not to defeat them in an open battle. Believing the Parthians were weak and disorganized, Crassus ended up attacking almost at once through the most desolate part of the desert and encountered the Parthian army near the town of Carrhae. Rather than organize his army in the traditional Roman fashion with infantry in the center and cavalry on the wings, Crassus organized his men into a hollow square, each side made up of 12 cohorts. This made them difficult to flank, but they sacrificed mobility. Surena sent his horse archers to surround the Romans, and Crassus attempted to drive them off with skirmishers, but the mounted archers drove them away. The horse archers then surrounded and engaged the Romans, sending arrows their way. The Romans bore large shields and armor, and there are different accounts of how well they fared against the arrows. Many accounts say the majority of wounds were dealt to the limbs of soldiers, while others say arrows pinned their shields to their arms and their feet to the ground. But things weren't necessarily bad yet. Crassus believed that the Romans could hold out until the Parthians ran out of arrows, but Surena used camels to supply his archers, meaning that the Parthians essentially had an endless supply of arrows. The Romans organized into their well-recognized tortoise formations in which they locked their shields tightly together to resist arrows, but this restricted them in melee combat, and so Parthian cataphracts launched multiple attacks against the Roman lines. Not only did this cause heavy casualties, but it forced the Romans to switch formations, which weakened them against the Parthian horse archers. So Crassus sent his son Publius to try to drive off the cavalry, but the Parthians faked a retreat and drew out the pursuing force. Publius and his men were lured far away from the rest of their army and attacked by cataphracts, their retreat cut off by mounted archers. Publius retreated to a hill where he committed suicide, and the rest of his men were killed or captured. Crassus was not yet aware that his son was dead, but realized he was in danger, and so he ordered his army to advance. The Parthians met him and bore his son's head on a spear. They surrounded the Roman infantry and shot at them, while the heavy cavalry continued to launch a series of attacks. A devastated Crassus ordered a retreat, and his force fled to the nearby town of Carrhae. He left 4,000 wounded soldiers behind, who were killed the next morning by the Parthians. An additional 4 Roman cohorts got lost in the dark and were surrounded and destroyed, with only 20 surviving. Threatened by mutiny, Crassus accepted surrender, but during the negotiations, a Parthian sparked violence and Crassus was killed. In the end, 20,000 Romans were killed, almost half their force, and another 10,000 captured. This battle was a major defeat for Rome and a major victory for Parthia. Though one of the earlier major engagements between the two empires, it would not be the last.